Hey guys, welcome back to Snack Time. Today's video, we're going to take a look at VaultWarden. VaultWarden is an open source password manager server that interfaces with the Bitwarden client. Let's jump in and let me show you the software, and then I'll show you how to configure it and run it on your own server. So if you've ever used Bitwarden before, it's basically the same thing. The interface is very similar. You can still use your Bitwarden browser plugin to interface with it, pull passwords, or automatically fill passwords, just generate them. Pretty much everything that you would normally do from the officially hosted version of Bitwarden. Let's show you around the interface just a little bit, just in case you had never seen it before. I created a username called snack.simhow.com, and I'll paste my password in. Now, ideally, you would have MFA set up so that, you have that extra protection. So I know one question that I might get is, why would I want to host this myself when there's other services like even the official Bitwarden server that does this for free? Well, that's a good question. You may have an organization that needs to have all of their passwords stored, on a server that they control with very limited access to the internet. That may be a reason. You also may feel that if you host it yourself, you're a smaller target than the official Bitwarden server that has probably people pounding away on it daily, trying to get in there and get as many passwords as they can. Whatever the reason is, that's totally up to you, and you have the freedom of choosing whether to host it yourself or have somebody else host it. So let me show you the software a little bit, and you can see what you're going to be getting. So once you've signed in, it's, like I said, very, very similar to the official. You can go over here to new, create folders. You can also come in here and add a new item, and that would be a login or a credit card, possibly some sort of identity information, a secure note, all the same stuff that you can do with the official Bitwarden server. So for like, say we want to make one from Google, and I want my username to be bob@google.com, and I can use this to generate a password. I can also, use my one-time password, my MFA. I can set that up in here as well. I can add notes, and I can share this out to other people. I can also change the ownership of this item to be maybe an organization that I set up so that I can share passwords with multiple people. And if I ever need to access it, I can access it here. I can also access this information through the web browser plugin. I've connected that here, and I can do a search for Google, and that information should be readily available here. Next up, as I discussed before, you can do organizations, which is an easy way for you to share a bunch of passwords to specific people and without having to share them individually. So you can create a new organization. I can call it pretty much whatever I want to. I'm just going to call this XYZ company and hit submit. So now any password that I had in here will be accessible by anybody that's a member of this organization. And I can add members to the organization very easily. I can invite people this way. I can pick their permissions in the organization. All right, so once I'm back to my account, let's check out some of the other options we have. We do have the ability to send secure notes. So you can generate a secure and encrypted note or file and send that to people. So right here, I can do text, then save that. And that's been encrypted. Now all I have to do is send this URL to somebody, and they'll be able to access the message. Next up, we have a generator. This is just a basic password generator. But one thing that's really cool is you can do password phrases, which is very popular. Next up, we have the ability to import data. And so if you are using a different password manager, you can import that straight into VaultWarden. It has all these different formats that it supports from a variety of different password managers that are already out there. We can do our export, so we can export all of our data if we decide this wasn't for us, I'm moving somewhere else. You have a bunch of settings for your specific account. One of the more important ones, obviously, is our two-step login. So let's add a 2FA to our account so it's more secure. I'm going to paste my password. And now it presents us with our QR code that we'll need to scan and just the resulting digits from scanning this QR code into our Authenticator app. And this supports all the different MFA apps. You don't have to use Authy or Microsoft. You can pretty much use any of them that support QR codes. So we can also use YubiKeys, which is really cool on Duo. I probably wouldn't do email, but FIDO is an option. And last up, we have our keys, and this is where we can change our password iterations and our encryption method. The rest of these options are pretty straightforward. Preferences, we have an option to, what our vault timeout is. We can also do, what's it going to do? Is it going to lock the account or completely log us out? We can show image icons. We can change our theme. We can go under domain rules next. And these are just domains that are pretty much related to each other. So if you're signing in to zonealarm.com here, it's going to be the same thing as ZoneLab. And you can add some custom ones if you want. Lastly is our emergency access. So if you do have somebody that can gain access to your account, should something happen to you, they'll be able to gain access through this method, and you'll just add them as an emergency contact. And you can have even a wait method, how much time do they have to wait in order to gain access to your account. So it's a lot of customization that you can do for your individual account level. Later on in the video, I will also show you how to change settings that apply to your entire website. All right, guys, so now that we've seen the software, let me show you how to set that up on your own server. Now for this, we're going to need a couple of things. We're going to need Linux running Docker. We're also going to be using Portainer for this project, and we're going to be filtering all of our traffic and handling our SSL certs through Nginx Proxy Manager. If you need help setting any of that stuff up, just check out one of my previous videos where I walk you through the entire process of setting up your own cloud-based server. So first thing, let's head off to Google and find the GitHub. So we're going to be doing a search for VaultWarden and GitHub. So I don't want you guys to confuse this with the official version of the Bitwarden server. This is open source. This is not anything to do with Bitwarden other than using their client. So going to their Docker page here kind of reiterates that point again. This is an alternative implementation of the Bitwarden server. But now we're looking for our command right here, and this is what we want. We want our Docker run and all this other fun stuff that we've used in the past for other projects. So let's jump into this. We're going to take this command and we're just going to kind of keep this in the background for now. Let's go ahead and sign into our Portainer server and kind of pick apart this command, take out what we need, and implement it that way. So we are going to need a couple of things here. We're going to need to set up our own VaultWarden network so that the only communication going to that container is the ones that are on that same network, like Nginx Proxy Manager, and that'll be probably about it. So let's head off to networking. Let's check out the subnets. Looks like we got 18 is taken, 5 is taken, 21, 17, but 22 was not taken. So let's do that. Let's just copy this subnet here. Going to add a new network. I'm going to call this VaultWarden. I'll paste my subnet. I'm going to change this to 22. And let's create this network. All right. Our network has been created. I also want to have a separate volume for this container so that it can store any of its data, the passwords, and the database all outside of the container itself. So when I need to update it, that data is going to be safe. It's going to be stored outside of the container. So let's go to volumes and let's add ourselves a new volume. And we're just going to be calling it VaultWarden. Don't need to be too creative here. It just needs the one volume. Now let's go back to our containers and let's add a new one. And let's hop back to that GitHub page and pull out the information we need. So name, sure, why not? Name Easy enough. VaultWarden. Now you can make that whatever you want. Here's where we establish our volume container. This -v is for volume, but we're going to be doing that ourselves. But we see that the path that it needs to go to on the container is /data. Right, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come down here to volumes, and I'm going to add an additional mapping. I'm going to paste data here, and I'm going to select my VaultWarden volume. Let's head back again. Restart unless stopped. We'll set that up later on. The port we're not going to reuse because we're going to be using Nginx Proxy Manager to handle all that traffic, so we don't need to expose this container to the internet directly. Last thing we need is just the repository on Docker Hub. I'm going to copy this guy. Let's head on back and paste him in the image. It already has :latest, which is what I usually add to these, but it's already there. With that being said, I think that's almost about it. The only thing that we need to do is go under network and make sure that the default is not bridge, but VaultWarden. All right, and let's deploy this. All right, cool. So now that we have deployed our container, let's check out the logs and see how it went. I'm gonna click on logs here, and we see that our private key was created. No error messages. This is good. Cool. I think we're ready to make some other changes. We need to set up our subdomain so that we know how to get to this page, and we also need to set up Nginx. Let's jump back to containers, and now let's go under, I use Namecheap, but feel free to use any DNS server that you want. I'm going to add a new record under advanced here, and I'm just going to call this Vault. I'm going to use the same IP address as my server, my external IP address, and I'm going to save these changes. All right, with that being saved, now I'm going to jump over to my Nginx Proxy Manager. All right, now we're signed into Nginx Proxy Manager. Let's go to proxy hosts. I'm going to add a new one, and I'm going to call this vault.sendhow.com. Now that A record that we made on Namecheap was Vault, and then it filled the rest of it in because it was a subdomain. It's an A record, which A records will point to subdomains typically. And let's hit add here. And this is asking, where do we want to forward the traffic within our Docker network? Well, that's easy. Let's come in here and copy this name. Let's paste it into here. We're going to use the host name because it's a whole heck of a lot easier than trying to keep up with the IP addresses. Now, asking for a forward port. Remember, if we come back here, the port it wanted to use was 80. So that's the one we're going to specify. I'm also going to do my usual block common exploits. I'm going to allow WebSocket support, and I'm going to hit save. So now that's set up, but it's set up using HTTP. Not a good thing if you're transmitting passwords back and forth. Let's go under our edit here, and let's go under SSL, and we're going to request a new SSL. We're going to force it, and we're going to agree to the terms of service. All right, it was able to request a certificate, and it has applied it. We're almost able to sign into our VaultWarden server, but not quite yet. Remember, we did set a separate network, and we just need to make sure that Nginx is also a part of that network. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to communicate with our container. I'm going to come in here into our Nginx container. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're going to select a network to join, and that will be our VaultWarden, and I'm going to hit join. So now that we've joined our Nginx Proxy Manager to our VaultWarden network, now we are able to see if the server is working. So let's go under our Nginx, and because I'm lazy, I'm just going to click on it here. Assuming we've done everything correct, we are now able to create an account. So let's go ahead and create an account really quickly just to make sure everything's working there. Okay, so let's go to create account. For my email address, I'm going to use snack@sinhow.com, and you can call me Ben. And my master password, something nice and complicated. And I'm going to paste that again. I'm not going to put a password hint. And sure, we can check for breaches on this password. Why not? And hit create account. All right, now our account has been created. Let's sign in. And now we're all signed in and ready to go. We will most likely want to establish a connection between our browser plugin and this new server. Let's go ahead and go over that really quickly before I move on to setting up the admin control panel. So this is a Chromium browser. I'm just going to do a search for Bitwarden, and honestly, that's should be the same for pretty much any browser you're using. I'm going to add it and add extension. All right, now we have our extension loaded. Let's click on it up here at the top. And you see where it says logging on with bitwarden.com. Let's change that to self-hosted. And for our server, we're going to put in our https://vault.sinhow.com. And let's save this. All right, now I'm going to type in my email address, snack@sinhow.com. Remember that for now and hit continue, and then paste in my password, and sign in. And now we can see that we're completely signed in and we're ready to start loading passwords. And we can do it either through the extension, or we can also do it through the web interface. So if you do want to be able to change the server settings of your VaultWarden server, you will need to complete this extra step, which is establishing an admin key. And the way that we're going to do it is a much more secure method than just putting it in plain text in a configuration file. This one does require a couple more steps, but it's definitely worth it, especially if you're trying to keep your stuff secure. So for this next step, we will be following the instructions on this GitHub URL for VaultWarden. We'll be setting up an encrypted password. So the easiest way to do this is to do this from within Portainer. Let's jump into our VaultWarden container and let's click on the console icon right here. And let's hit connect. All goes well, you should be presented with a command prompt. This isn't the same command prompt that is on your host Linux server. This is the prompt of what's inside the container itself. So if we do an ls, we should see a couple things, and the one thing that we want is the VaultWarden command here. So we're going to run a VaultWarden, and then we're going to add hash. So now it's asking you what password do you want to use. And what this is going to do is this is going to take the password that you give it. It's going to hash it and make it so that it's not readable by anybody via plain text. So with this, I'm going to paste in a decently secure password. I'm going to do it one more time. And now it's going to give us this admin token, and we're going to assign this under the environment variables under Portainer. So let's copy this guy. And you may want to put him in a notepad someplace safe. All right, now that we've copied it, let's go to containers. Let's go under our VaultWarden and let's duplicate /edit. And if we scroll down here to our env, let's add an environmental variable. We're going to be pasting the text that we just copied from the console, but we're going to break it apart a little bit. So the name of the variable is admin_token. And if you look at the command that you copied, it equals this quotation, and then this text here, and then another quote. But we're only going to take the stuff that's inside of those quotes and put that into our Portainer. So let's copy this and let's paste it down here at the bottom. All right, and now let's hit deploy the container and replace. All right, let's check our logs, see how it went. And so far, no error messages, which is great. Let's head back over to our VaultWarden webpage, and we're going to do vault.sendhow.com/admin. Going to ask us for the admin token, and that is going to be the password that you pasted into that console window, not the one that it was hashed and looks like super complicated. It's the one that you came up with and you pasted in there or typed in there. I'm going to paste mine, enter. So now we have access to our admin panel, and this is the place we'll use to set, sort of configuration changes that apply to our entire environment. So the first thing, let's change our URL so that it's accurate. And the rest of the stuff that's in here is really up to you. You can change pretty much everything about the server, how it runs. Password iterations are great. If you want to increase that a little bit, globally and have this apply to everybody, you can do that. There's also advanced settings. There's YubiKey settings if you want to be able to use YubiKeys. There's Duo. You can also set your email settings here, as well as your read-only config. You can do a backup of the database. We're going to save this. Now that we've updated our host, one of the other things you can do is you can go under users and you can see all the people that have signed up for accounts and how many attachments and entries they have. You can't see any of their data. That's all encrypted, and that's not something you have access to as the admin, which is exactly the way we want it to be. But you can delete and disable users if you so choose. You can also see organizations that people have set up. Organizations are just another easy way for you to share passwords amongst a group of individuals. And you can delete those organizations, but again, you can't see really the contents of them. And lastly, you have diagnostics. If there's any problems with your server, this should tell you. And that's pretty much about it. Vault just takes you back to the sign in for the main web page, lets you sign in and view your passwords. Hey, I hope this was informative and helpful for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.